Good morning, students, and welcome back to our poetry class. Okay, let us begin with our poetry. Last time we already started with the Darkling Thrush by Thomas Hardy. I told you about Thomas Hardy and we did the first stanza of the poem, wherein we had seen how the poet is giving the explanation of the weather, right? In this particular stanza, he is explaining in detail about the weather. So he says that he was just leaning at the coppice gate, at the wooden gate, he says. He was leaning on the wooden gate and then he spoke about the weather, how the weather was. In this poem, he spoke about the frost, how the frost looked like frost was grey like a ghost, he said, right? And then he spoke about the winter. So winter, the area was deserted. This is what he had explained in the poem. Area was totally deserted because nobody was out. It was cold. The winter was dying, almost dying. It was too cold and people all were inside in their homes to get the warmth of their houses. They were all inside. So totally there wasn't any outside activity. Everything was some indoor activity maybe going on, right? Because nobody was out. He spoke about the sun, how dull the sun was looking. Then he spoke in these lines about the climbing creepers, isn't it? Climbing plants. He spoke about the climbing plants over here. Like this broken string of the lies, he said, the climbing plants, isn't it? So all these things we had seen in our previous class in the first stanza of the poem. So that is what I have revised, what we have done previously. So let us come to the next stanza. Today we are going to do the next stanza, the second stanza. So in this stanza what the poet is saying, let us see, he says, the land's sharp features seem to be the century's corpse outlined. His crypt, the cloudy canopy, the wind is death lament, the ancient pulse of germ and birth was shrunken hard and dry, and every spirit upon earth seemed fervorless as I. So the poet says over here, the land's sharp features seem to be. So what do you understand by land sharp features? Land's prominent features. What are these prominent features? The outstanding features, the projecting features. Now, on earth, on the land, what are the projecting features? What are the outstanding features? We know the outstanding features are the mountains, the hills, isn't it? They're all outstanding, projecting out, isn't it? Outstanding, eye-catching, flashy features, isn't it? So this is what we can call them as. The mountains, the hills, they're all outstanding. The cliffs, isn't it? These are all outstanding features. So the poet is speaking about all these things over here. The prominent features, he says, seem to be the century's corpse outlined. So they seemed, these prominent features, these outstanding features on land seem to be the century's corpse. Century's corpse, the dead body of the century. So from here itself, it might be very much clear. So he's speaking about the century. Now what do you understand by century? Now which century are you in? You are in the 21st century. So here the poet is not referring to the 21st century at all. He is referring to the 19th century. So here he says, so what exactly he is saying over here is that 19th century is coming to an end and the 20th century is going to begin. This is what he is trying to focus in this particular poem. So the end of 19th century. Okay, so that is what. Now century in the sense, 100 years make a century, isn't it? So that is what he's speaking over here. The century's corpse, century's dead body, century is coming to an end. So this is happening on the last days of the 19th century. That is towards the end, December 29th, 30th, right? So he's focusing on December 29th and he's speaking over here. December normally is winter season. So that is already shown in the first stanza itself, how the sun is dull, how the fog is dull, isn't it? How the climbing plants are, isn't it? How they are like the broken musical instrument layers, isn't it? So all these things we had seen in the previous stanza. So that is focusing about the end of winter. Winter is coming to an end. Now he's speaking about the century in this particular stanza. The 19th century is coming to an end, and it is the beginning. It is going to begin with the 20th century. This is what he says. The century is corpse outlined. So century is dead body outlined in the sense laid out. It is brought out for burial, the corpse, the dead body is brought out for the burial. Okay, so he's speaking about the death of an era. What is era? Era means it's a period of more than 1 year, right? Or more than 1 year. That is what is called as era. So his script, the cloudy canopy. His script in the sense it's storm the cloudy canopy, tomb of the dead century. That is what is focusing. Cloudy canopy. So the clouds is looking, the cloud, he says, the poet says, the cloud forms. The cloud is forming the tomb for the dying century, for the dead body of the century. The cloud is going to form the tomb. So he is considering the cloud as the tomb for the dead body. That is the dead body of the 19th century. The wind, its death lament. So he's saying, speaking about the wind. How is the wind? He says, the wind, its death lament. The wind is mourning over the death. The wind, the cold wind which is blowing, is also mourning at the death of the century. The wind is said over here as sad because the wind is mourning, is crying at the death of the century. This is what he's speaking over here. Was shrunken, the ancient pulse of germ and birth, the ancient rhythm, that is what ancient pulse is saying, of germ and birth. Now what is germ? Germ is conception, reproducing, isn't it? So germination, so reproducing. So germ and birth, the conception and the delivery, that is what you can see. Germ and birth was shrunken hard. So everything has come to an end. That is what he is focusing. By saying these words, he is trying to tell us that everything has come to an end. Shrunken. Okay, it has shrunken, hard and dry. So everything has slowed down considerably. The germination or the reproduction, isn't it? All this, and the conception or and the delivery, you can say, and the delivery, all this has slowed down considerably. Why everything has slowed down? Everything has slowed down because of the end of the century. So by using these things, what is he focusing over here? The culture, the concept, everything, whatever the values, culture, traditions, whatever was carried on for one particular century is coming to an end, has slowed down. Everything is replaced now with the modern technology. So he doesn't know what is going to happen in the next century. How the next century will be, he doesn't know. So whatever has gone so far, he was in the present, he was in the 19th century, so he knows about it, isn't it? Now it is coming to an end. Everything has slowed down. So everything is getting changed, right? So total reformation is taking place. This is what he is trying to explain over here. Was shrunken hard and dry, and every spirit upon earth seemed fervorless as I. Every spirit. So he says everything, living, non-living thing, human being, everything on earth, right? He's speaking, seemed fervorless, listless. What is it? Listless in the sense everything seemed to be without motions, without movement, isn't it? That means lacking energy, totally. All these things, listless in the sense lacking energy, lacking enthusiasm. So everything on earth has been lacking energy, lacking enthusiasm. So everything has slowed down. This is what he's trying to show over here. Fervorless as I, even he himself, even the poet himself has lost his energy, is lacking his energy, is lacking his enthusiasm. So totally it is a change. This is what the poet is trying to tell us in this particular stanza. Now let us see the poetic devices from this particular stanza, and then let us move to the next stanza of the poem. Second stanza. First, let us see the second line of second stanza. The century's corpse outlined. So, in this particular stanza itself, you have century's corpse. Corpse is dead body. Dead body is in relation to human being. So, human quality is discussed over here. So, that is personified, personification, right? So, the poetic device used over here is personification. Next one, next line you can see, he scrapped the cloudy canopy. You can see, C is repeated. C sound is repeated thrice. Crept cloudy canopy. So that is alliteration, repeated sounds of C. Alliteration. Alliteration again you have in the previous stanza also. We didn't discuss last time when we discussed the poetic devices. Previous stanza, that is in the first stanza, you have had sought their household fires. H sound you have over there. H sound, repetition of H sound. Tangled binds, stems, coat the sky. S. Stems, coat the sky. So S sound is repeated. Okay. So these are the only alliteration in the entire poem. So that is the poetic device about. And then you have the cloudy canopy, that is visual imagery, right? Visual imagery you have. When you hear the word cloudy canopy, you can just visualize it. Cloudy canopy, you can just visualize it. Okay. So this is about the poetic devices used by the poet over here. Then the rhyme scheme you can see of the poem. Rhyme scheme, the poem is, all the stanzas are having 8 lines, isn't it? And all these lines are following the same rhyme scheme. I can do with the first stanza over here. Remaining thing you can just understand from it, isn't it? First stanza you can see the first line, the last word of the first line. See, gate, gray. It is not matching gate and gray. So you can give A for the first line. Second line you can give B. Desolate, gate, desolate is rhyming. So A, B, A. So first one A and third one is A. Fine. A, B, A you can give over there. Then day, day is rhyming again with gray, right? So you can give that as B. So A, B, A, B. Again another B you are getting. So 2 A's you have got, 2 B's also you have got. Now the next line, that is a new line. It is not rhyming with any of the above ones. Sky, sky is not rhyming with any of the above one. So we can give it a new one. So it is C over there. You can give the name as C. Then the next one, next scheme is lies. Lies is not rhyming with any of the above. So you can give it as D. So C, D. Then nigh. Nigh is rhyming with sky. Sky, nigh, right? So you can give it again C. C, D, C. Then lies, fires. Okay. So there again it is D. So AB, AB, CD, CD, right? So this is the rhyme scheme of the poem, and which is followed throughout for the remaining stanzas of the poem. So now it is very much clear to you the second stanza of the poem, wherein the central idea or the gist of the poem, you can say, speaks about the end, the close of a century, that is the 19th century. From the in this particular stanza, that is in the second stanza, you get to know the central idea of the poem or the gist of the poem, isn't it? You come to know what exactly the poet is trying to tell us. So there we come to know that it is the end of the 19th century and the beginning of the 20th century, what is referring to, wherein he says that century has the prominent features he's focusing, isn't it? That is the projecting features of, that is, I told you, hills, mountains, all those stuff, cliffs and all. They all seem to be dying. They are all in the form of dead body. This is what he says. And there he is imagining the clouds as the tomb. That is what he's just visualizing it as the cloud is forming the tomb of the 19th century of this dead body. And he says the wind, the cold wind, the chilled wind is death lament, isn't it? That is also mourning. The cold is mourning over the death of the century. Cold is also disappointed at the death of the century. This is what he's saying. And the ancient pulse. So what is he referring over here? The old values, the old style, isn't it? Everything is dying with it. This is what he is focusing over here. Was shrunken heart. So there is no conception, isn't it? The conception and delivery all had slowed down, considerably. This is what he says. And everything seemed to be lacking energy, lacking zest, lacking enthusiasm. This is what he says over here, right? So towards the end, including himself, he is included in this. So that is how a century is coming to an end and a new century. So in the new century, there is urbanization, there is technology, modernization, everything is there. But he doesn't know how far it will be successful, how far it will be good, isn't it? But the old one was with old values, isn't it? Yeah, so with all those things, it is coming to an end and it is going to begin with a new century. So no idea how the new century will be, the 20th century. This is what he is picturizing in this. So let us move to the next stanza of the poem, the third one. At once a voice arose among the bleak twigs overhead in a full-hearted even song of joy illimited. An aged thrush, frail gowned and small in blast beruffled plume, had chosen thus to fling his soul upon the growing gloom. So this is what the third stanza is. Let me explain this to you. At once a voice arose among the bleak twigs overhead. So at once a voice arose. So all of a sudden a voice arose. Voice arose from where? From the bleak twigs, from that dull, dark twigs. Twigs means dry part or dry branch of the tree, isn't it? That is what twigs it is called, right? So he says, at once a voice arose. So a voice, you could hear a voice. So in this bleakness, in this sadness, he was seeing that the 19th century is dying. So in this sorrowful time, he could hear a voice, isn't it? A voice which came. The bleak twigs overhead, from the bleak twigs he could hear the voice in a full-hearted even song. So this was a full-hearted in the sense wholehearted evening song it was. Evening song sung by a bird. Now which bird was singing over here? Of joy illimited. So this was of joy which was boundless, a joy which was boundless, a song which was sung so happily, so in a pleasant manner, cheerful way, isn't it? So which bird sang this? An aged thrush. You already saw the picture of thrush. Thrush is a small bird, right? So an aged thrush. So the bird was aged. It was frail in the sense weak. It was weak. The bird was aged. You see, the bird was weak. It was gowned. Gowned means it was thin and small. Already you know thrushes are very small birds, right? So here the bird was frail, it was gowned and it was small. This bird in blast beruffled plume. So how his feathers was? The thrush's feather was in a disordered manner, isn't it? Worn out manner. It was in a rough way, isn't it? The feather was in a rough manner. Because you know how the way we use our leg continuously, the bird was using its feathers for a long time for flying, and it was totally worn out. It was totally looking battered, isn't it? By the storm, isn't it? By all this, it was battered in the sense it was in a rough condition. This situation, the state of the feather was very rough. In blast beruffled plume, had chosen thus to fling his soul. So this bird has chosen this song to fling his soul, to pull out, is it to pour out its heart. Again, that is a human quality, isn't it? His soul, fling his soul, to pour out his heart. Who pours out his heart? See, animals, human being, everyone is having heart. But then we sang or we did an action from our bottom of our heart. It is from within the heart, from our heart. So this type of a reference from heart, it is normally referred to human being. So again, that is a human quality, what is personified over here. So that is personification. His soul, you can see, isn't it? Soul. So it's true that animals too, or birds do have heart. But then when we use in terms of pouring out something, and the way it is shown over here, it is personified, right? So that is again a poetic device used over here. Upon the growing gloom, upon the growing darkness. So in this darkness, there is some hope. So who is giving that hope? The bird thrush. So this is what we are coming to know at a later half of the poem, right? So this is what you get to know over here. And again you have a poetic device used over here. Voice arose among the bleak twigs. A voice arose among the bleak twigs. So this is auditory imagery, right? Auditory imagery. So you can hear the voice. You feel, you can hear the voice. So that is what is given over here. So two poetic devices you have in this particular stanza of the poem. The rest all are the same. Poetic, rhyme scheme is the same, right? So this is about the poem. So here we are told, so in this mere darkness, you can say, total darkness, wherein the poet was finding no hope at all, he could get some hope from the singing bird, from this singing small little thrush. So this is what we come to know. Let us move to the next stanza of the poem. Next stanza is, so little cause for carolings of such ecstatic sound was written on terrestrial things afar or nigh around, that I could think there tremble through his happy good night air some blessed hope whereof he knew, and I was unaware. Let us do the last stanza. So little cause for carolings. Little cause for carolings. Carolings, there is little cause, according to the poet, there is little cause for carolings, for singing of songs. So the bird, you saw, the bird was singing the song. So there was little hope for carolings of each ecstatic sound, of each joyful sound. There wasn't any reason to be joyful. The bird was very cheerful, joyful. And the poet was not knowing the reason why the bird is so joyful, right? Was written on terrestrial things. There was very little things, okay? Very little things written on the earth. Earthly things, terrestrial things means earthly things. Where was written afar or nigh around. So at a distance, afar means far away, at a distance or nigh, nearby, far away or nearby. There was nothing to be seen to feel like to be happy or to be joyful, cheerful, isn't it? There was no hope at all. From far, widespread, there wasn't any hope. He couldn't see any hope. No happiness anywhere. No hope at all he could see all around. That I could think they trembled through his happy good night air. That the poet could reason out. The poet could think that the thrush bird was so happy about. For what? What hope was he having that he was singing such a lovely song? Good night air. So here he was singing such a happy song of good night, wherein he was wishing everyone, to every listener, he was saying good night. He was singing the song of good night to every listener, right? Some blessed hope whereof he knew. So the poet is saying some hope of good fortune, wherein the bird was knowing what the poet was not knowing, right? The bird was knowing, having some good hope of fortune. This is what he says, wherein the poet was not knowing at all, of which he knew, and I was unaware, where I was unaware, where the poet was unaware totally. So this is how the poem comes to. So he is happy good night air, wherein the bird is wishing everyone good night, isn't it? So this is again a personification, right? A human quality which is being described over here. The bird's good night song. Bird is wishing good night to everyone, isn't it? So this is again a sort of personification given over here, a poetic device. So from here, what you can understand is that, you know, I told you in the very beginning when I was introducing the poet to you, I told you he is a Victorian realist, right? So a realist, the one who follows realism, isn't it? Like how you have existentialism and all. Same way you have realism. Realism in the sense a person who believe in real things, the thing what is existing on earth, wherein you can perceive, wherein you can touch, you can feel the things. Believe in those things. Don't believe in any other supernatural things or superstitious things, right? Such a person is called as a realist. In realistic things they believe, whatever they come across, whatever they see, whatever they perceive, that is what they believe, not beyond that. So they don't believe in any beliefs, right? So such a person is called as a realist. So he was a Victorian realist. So over here, you can see, from this you can understand, this poem over here is ending with a note. What it is saying is that human being, it is not much clear, everything, human being can't understand nature properly. This is how the poem comes to a conclusion. Human being, because the thrush bird, he find reason, because the thrush bird is singing happily, the poet feels that he's finding some hope that somewhere is going to have a good fortune later on. So here nature itself is giving an idea, nobody can judge. So in that gloomy place, in the gloomy surrounding of nature, the bird can find happiness, joy, cheerfulness, right? So this is what nature is saying. So people, human being, can't understand nature properly. So that is the rule of nature. This is what nature is showing over here, isn't it? So nothing is permanent on earth. This is what you can understand. Nothing is permanent on earth, isn't it? We are all born to die. So soon after life, there is death. We all know that. We are living with it. But in spite of that, when somebody dies, we always have that feeling that we will never die, isn't it? So with this feeling, we live every day. Every day we feel that we will never die. We see others dying. So death is only for them, not for us. This is our belief. With this belief, but we know the real thing that we are going to die. We are born to die, isn't it? So every day we don't think tomorrow will die, day after tomorrow. We don't think that. When somebody dies, we feel that we are going to live forever. With this expectation, we live every day, isn't it? So this is what is shown. Everything. So after winter, there is spring. After spring, there is winter. So this is the change, like how the change of season is. Same way the change of century, after the 19th century, after a century, the next century will come. And with that, there'll be new hopes, new things, isn't it? Many changes will be there. We have to go along with it, isn't it? So this is what, so soon after that century, another century will come. This particular 20th century will be followed by the next century, which we are following presently, the 21st century, isn't it? We are living in the 21st century. So we know after this 21st century, there will be another 22nd century, what we may not witness at all. We may not be living till then, but then still we hope to live for the 22nd century, isn't it? So this is what we feel. So there is hope. That is what you can see in the bird. The bird, that is what the poet is saying. The bird can understand that there is some good fortune. So he is having some hope which the poet can't understand. So this is how the poem comes to an end. So thank you very much for the day.